we get a lot of questions about this, and I talk to a lot of parents of transgender kids who are just coming out, is how did you know you were transgender?
Yeah, this is something that we just talked about in our podcast. So a little more in depth there. So great reason to check that out
Mm-hmm.
if you want to hear more.
Mm-hmm.
But in a nutshell, I knew for as long as I can remember, really, definitely before puberty, as young as I have memories, really being a very young kid, just not identifying with my body, just feeling dysphoric about my body, which is basically a medical term that means you feel really shitty about your body. And you have a very clear idea of the way your body should be, and the way you would like to be perceived by other people. And you have a very clear idea that that's not the body you have and how you're perceived. So I experienced that for as long as I can remember, my entire life. And
Mm-hmm.
I tried to just put it away and not deal with it because I didn't really understand that transitioning was a viable option, that that was something that could help, something that could alleviate some of that discomfort of that dysphoria. Until I was about 19, had been living in San Francisco for a while at that point, going to school here, had met a couple different trans people, kind of read about it online, realized that you can in fact transition, and that you can do a lot to alleviate that dysphoria. And so I would say there was this part that I was always aware of, which was feeling discomfort with my body. And then there was kind of that moment when I was about 19 where it clicked in my brain that really means I'm trans, and that means that the best thing I could really do in my personal experience was to take those steps to medically transition and socially transition, and be able to be perceived as a woman, and be able to live my life as a woman, and be a bit more comfortable in my own body.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see another question from Lindsay. How old were you when you started to research and learn more about how to be more you? Yeah, so that's, like I said, I was about 19 at the time. And what helped the most at that point? That's a good question. I did a lot at that point. I was trying to talk to other trans people. I was trying to read about transgender experiences. I was trying to really learn as much as I could, and trying to find other experiences that I could relate to. Um, and so I would say that was probably what helped the most, was connecting with other trans people, especially really early on, connecting with other trans people who were in my age range, who were further along in their transitions, who could kind of assure me that things would be okay, that I would make it through, that the emotional craziness of first starting hormones would eventually go away. And I see Lindsay followed up. What was it that made it click at 19? I would say, if there was one moment or one day that I remember when it clicked, I think I was actually listening to a news podcast that I listen to regularly, and they had a guest on who was transgender, and she was talking about her experience of transitioning and coming out. And I just kind of thought, wow, I would really like to do that. I was like, wait, I think that means I'm trans. If I'm listening to a trans woman describing her experience and thinking that's what I would like to do, it's kind of obvious at that point. So I think that's when it really clicked. I had this idea living in San Francisco and having met a couple trans people at that point, that I felt really uncomfortable around trans people, not in a way that, like, they made me uncomfortable. Well, they made me uncomfortable because I think